Hey, it's Fit Gear Hunter here to break down a lot of the most recent updates from a different sort of series of devices. And I'm going to put it all in one video just to break down some of the summary of differences or benefits, or maybe why they're not going to be tested more immediately, even though there's all these new products that are now on the market. So I want to talk about the Fitbit Sense and the Fitbit Versa and what the updates are, and break down, what I think aren't valuable changes. The Apple Watch SE as well as the 6. Suunto had a whole range of updates to the 3, 5, and 9, as well as the 7. So I'm going to break down what the summary of those things are, as well as the Garmin Venu SQ, and touch on the Garmin 745 and HRM-Pro, so the heart rate monitor Pro. Because I feel like the 745 and the HRM-Pro are probably the only two pertinent things for training development that have come out. So of all these different devices, we're going to break down a lot of the differences, but why I don't think they're pertinent to true training and fitness development. So this whole channel is focused on devices that help you develop and focus on your training aspects that aren't based in running and biking, mainly looking at high intensity interval training, CrossFit training, and cross training. So as always, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing for a whole bunch of future updates to come, and future reviews, I should say. So let's break it down. I don't know how to set the time barriers where you could just jump to whatever section you want. So we'll just dive into each piece. So the Fitbit Sense and the Fitbit Versa 3. So some primary updates there. When I look at the two main updates that relate to fitness, there's really only one significant update, and that's the Pure Pulse, is what their optical heart rate sensor on the Fitbit. Now, the big downside with Fitbit is really twofold. Number one, you can't connect to a Bluetooth chest strap. And when you're doing high intensity interval training or CrossFit or cross training, anything with wrist flex, you have to be able to connect to a chest strap. Fitbit doesn't allow that, so it sort of shuts it off from the true fitness tracking and fitness development standpoint. And secondly, they only let you see your heart rate zones or your heart rate over time, but they don't give you an evaluation of exertion, an estimation for recovery, or an amount for load over time. So that's why, the Pure Pulse 2.0 is now they're calling it. From everything I've read and researched, it's not tracking any significantly better, and it is not tracking very well when it comes to true, workouts that come across the wrist or have wrist flex in them. So it sort of shuts down the whole need to necessarily test the two devices. But the biggest device is the Fitbit Sense, and it comes in more of the wellness types of development updates, but there's some things in there that I don't love about it. So let's break down the details of what the wellness aspects that have been developed have now come. So you have the SpO2 tracking. So it is when you specifically for tracking throughout the night, and you do have to use a specific watch face in order to have it tracked throughout the night. So I'm sure they can change that in an update, but only at night, and only if you use this special watch face that doesn't have a bunch of other information, doesn't look super great. They have something called the EDA scan. So it's like a skin response sensor built into it. You don't really get a lot of details though when you do the breakdown. It's a continual problem I have with Fitbit, and they don't let you see the details. It's everything in their site and everything in their app just feels so generic, and you can't dive into the data to really extract what you want to see out of it. You just get summary data or summary details. So the EDA scan, you basically, you do a stress test when it measures the skin. You basically put your hand on the watch, it measures, takes a measurement there. And then you go into the stress management app, and it'll give you a stress evaluation based on your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate, your exertion balance, which is sort of an evaluation of the workouts you've done recently, but not giving details into the workouts themselves, just sort of a number. So where did the number come from? Don't know, can't dive into the data. And then your sleep pattern. So those three basic things, responsiveness, exertion, and sleep, will determine your stress for that point in time, but it's just sort of a generic score. So it's like a generic evaluation. You give it some feedback based on three aspects where you can see a numeric value of where you're at, like out of 25 out of 30, or some score or some number. But that's all you have. You don't have a way to relate it to anything else. You just sort of see the number, and it doesn't give you any data or details. It's having, the Fitbit Sense does have ECG, which has not yet been enabled or activated until they get FDA approval. They have added some other things to health tracking in your sleep. So they'll do the breathing rate. So you can't see those details on the watch. It's only at night, and you just get a summary. You just get one number. So you'll see 13 for Monday, 12 for Tuesday, 14 for Wednesday. So not a lot of detail to see a chart over time of your breathing rate throughout the night. Heart rate variability, they will track that throughout the night, but they'll just give you one number. So you don't see a graph or a chart. You'll just have this plotted graph with one number for the breathing rate, heart rate variability, throughout the night. So it doesn't, and they do the same thing for temperature gauges. So a temperature gauge, basically just your skin temperature in the night to see if the room was hotter or colder. And from what I've studied or what I've seen from other analysis or other reviews, it's just based on like room temperature. So temperature tracking might have some value, but I don't know what it is necessarily. So if you look at that breathing rate, heart rate variability tracking, temperature gauge, single plots of information over a period of time. And then there's a big question as to whether it's going to be fully available to look at trends in history, whether you have a premium $10 a month membership or you don't have a premium $10 a month membership. When I looked at this, so I did a sleep study. So there's another review or a video you can watch when I did a sleep study of 4 main devices and all their sleep tracking over a period of time. And Fitbit continually overestimated. Even when I got 5.5 hours sleep and I felt really run down, I would get like an 85 on the score. And you compare these things. So you look at heart rate variability, breathing rate, the temperature gauge doesn't necessarily relate to anything else, or stress level compared to some of the other devices. You look at Garmin, it's got SpO2 all night, and with some devices you can do SpO2 all day. Respiration rate, you can see that plotted over time throughout the night. Your heart rate variability all the time. You can see it's one of the best, devices for checking heart rate variability throughout a whole period of time to 24 hours, and they relate it to body battery. So you can see that all the time. You look at Polar and their nightly recharge. Heart rate variability, you can see a chart throughout the night. Breathing rate chart throughout the night. Beat to beat intervals between, of your heart throughout the night. And then the scores, like a sleep evaluation, the scores always were more on point with how, you really felt from that sleep or how it relates to your recovery. So Fitbit's gotten all these things. So now they're doing all these different specialty things, but without clear data and without clear relevance to how it benefits your training. So it's neat. It's conceptually maybe a starting point, but all of their information comes out in these sort of bland milquetoast, aspects that don't really help your training and development, in my opinion. I really see Fitbit as just sort of a health and wellness for the general populace that's wanting to have a little bit more insight into their health and wellness. And that's why I feel like the Fitbit Sense, the Fitbit Versa 3, and the Fitbit line of watches isn't really relevant to true training development, especially when you're doing workouts that use wrist flex in them. So the Apple Watch SE and the Apple Watch 6. So there's a lot of specs online. I'm just going to give you sort of a summary of what the differences are for the SE and the 6, but also give you sort of a relevance to whether it's important to track or to see if it has any new benefits for fitness development. And the answer is no. So the 4 and 5, so the Apple Watch 4 and 5 had a great heart rate monitor. So they had a built-in heart rate monitor that's the best I have tested, even when doing wrist flex type workouts. So that appears to be the same from all the studies that I've done about the Apple Watch 6. Interestingly enough, the Apple Watch SE has a different heart rate that is more like the 4-5. So it should be and will be as good as the 4 and 5. So a great optical heart rate sensor, but there's nothing on the fitness side for development and for training and for tracking. So some of the minor differences, you'll still get the same 18 hours, and it doesn't include the SpO2 that the 6 now includes. So that's the benefit. That's one of the new things, SpO2 tracking on the Apple Watch 6. You don't have ECG tracking, and you don't have always on. So you have a faster processor than some of the other renditions, but you don't have always on, don't have ECG, don't have SpO2, and none of the devices do heart rate variability tracking across the time. Plus, the iOS 7 now will do sleep tracking, but if you look at any of the reviews for the sleep tracking, it's super generic. It's like going back in time 3 or 4 years for most of the other manufacturers on the market today. So it'll do deep and light sleep. You'll see when you went to bed and when you woke up, but you don't have any in-depth details to the sleep quality as far as like the richness of it, you know, the REM versus true deep sleep, breathing rates, things like that. You don't get those things. And on top of it all, it's an 18-hour battery life estimate. And they say 2 days, maybe 2.5, but none of that really benefits your fitness, and none of it is a significant change. I think the SE is a great price point. Obviously, the Apple Watch is probably the most, if you're an iPhone user, there's nobody that touches it as far as the capabilities as a smartwatch. I mean, it does all sorts of things. In my testing of it, I just felt like it's almost too much. It's overwhelming because it just does everything. It's like a little mini computer on your wrist. But as far as fitness development, they didn't add anything. As far as exertion estimates, load, recovery, things that would help you have an awareness of how hard that was, the impact of that workout was on your overall fitness level at that time, and how it relates to how much workout you need to be doing to grow and expand your fitness. So the SE, the 6, again, not significant need to test because it doesn't really enhance the things that we would want to test, at least on this review site. There is a development in the 6 that is going to be coming that's going to watch your VO2 max over time. I think they announced the VO2 max as a new feature, but it's been there forever. But they're eventually going to get to where it's sort of seeing your trend of VO2 max over time, which everybody's been doing for a while, especially Garmin. You can see your chart of your VO2 max over time. So nothing new to try to test and review, especially if you're wanting to test things for fitness development. So let's go to Suunto. Suunto had a big, massive update, and I appreciate the Suunto staying in the game because I think the biggest question was, are they going to stay in the game? So their major updates came to the 3, 5, and 9. And I'm just going to sort of look at the ones that affected the 9 because that's the one that has the resources, you know, your recovery time, you know, so resources like body battery, heart rate variability tracking over time, your recovery time, your load scores for like training effect, all through Fitbit. So the top of the line that has all the primary components for developing your fitness. But if you look at the updates that were included, it did give you a new neat watch face that had barometric altimeter and pressure evaluation right on the watch face itself. So you could see sort of like an immediate, you know, altitude thing. Oh, that is one thing that the Apple Watch did bring, is like constant altitude updates that you can see over time. Whether that's pertinent or useful is questionable. But the Suunto update really just relates to things that relate to running. So there was a few main things. You got a climb with sort of like hill tracking. So climb, loop, sprint. So loop, you know, your speed, pace, and power of doing a repeated loop in a track or on a course. Your climb, so your hill tracking and some sort of test estimates there for running, and then your sprint, your pace on a sprint or your output on a sprint. There's a minor weather update, so if you have the Baro only, you can get a barometric pressure change weather update for those things, and there's some updates to the training peaks stats, so you can have a workout elected for certain training peak stats to be able to flow in the training peaks app. So there's not a lot of, I mean, none of these relate to fitness development when it comes to the types of workouts that we're testing. When high intensity interval training, CrossFit, and cross training, the things that go across the wrist, those enhancements in the update don't affect. And so I don't feel any pull or any draw to really test those components because they relate to running, and this is not really a running focused channel. On the 7, so the 7 irks me. As I watched and studied the 7 updates, the main thing that's been changed is course routing and just general routing. So you can see, you can download a route to your course and you can see a big, beautiful plot of where you're going. The screen is beautiful. And that's the one thing about it that's so frustrating, is that the sports tracking is not. They cut out Fitbit analytics. They cut out exertion tracking, load tracking, recovery time tracking. And then you can't connect to a Bluetooth chest strap. And all of the studies show that the heart rate monitor, the optical heart rate monitor, which is the only thing you can rely on in a workout on the 7, is poor. So none of these updates, 3, 5, 9, and 7, benefit CrossFit or high intensity interval training or training that just affects the wrist flex. So great to see them expanding. Really need to get back to the bedrock of using Fitbit or some sort of an analytics system, as well as connecting to a Bluetooth chest strap. And please have something that has an AMOLED screen. So last, Garmin, the Garmin Venu SQ. So this is like a baby brother to the Venu. And the biggest thing about the Venu, because it was a beautiful screen, was that it did not do workout evaluation or load tracking. So you don't get all the first beat analytics. You really just get VO2 max tracking for the, I think, the first beat type stuff. Oh, and body battery. So it will do body battery. It's really a health and wellness. And, you know, to be honest, this is something I should have mentioned in the last video or one of the past videos. A little known fact about the Venu, it's one of the only Garmin watches where you can set the body battery as a data field on one of the Garmin watch faces. Obviously you can't do it on the third-party Connect, you know, but on the data fields available on the watch faces that Garmin has built into the watch, you can set the body battery as a data field. I thought that was great because it's more of a wellness type of watch. It does everything it should do for an AMOLED that is also sports tracking. It does great heart rate tracking. You will get your, you know, your all of the details for your run, pace, cadence, all these types of things. And it all comes in a beautiful package. But what's the difference with the SQ? The SQ really is the little brother. So, you know, there's a music and a non-music, which just means you have music or you don't have music. There's no differences otherwise. But now you have a square screen on the Venu. And the square screen, so if you take the regular Venu, it's 1.2 inches in diameter of a circular screen. If you take the Venu SQ, it's 1.3 of an inch diagonal. But when you break it down size-wise, the Venu SQ has a 25% smaller screen. So 25% less field of use for, you know, data. And they've changed some of the way it looks, but it's just a small screen. The body, the Venu is 43 millimeters wide and the Venu SQ is 40 millimeters wide. So it's a smaller overall watch. It's lighter, I think it's like 10 grams lighter, and they both use 20 millimeter quick release bands. So great there, but the big difference was it's just a smaller package, a smaller version. And then they took out a couple of simple things. They took out the active screens or the active watch faces where you see a cloud billow in, and they took out the visual workout movements. So if you go in to do a Pilates workout on the Venu, just like you would on the Vivo Active 4, you would be able to see a motion, somebody physically doing a downward dog or something like that. You can see that motion for a bunch of different types of the workouts. And if you build a training program on the strength, you can see the motion of the workouts, but they don't have any motion workouts on the Venu SQ. And then the main thing that they detracted from it was the barometric altimeter. So you don't have any stair counting. You can't get, real-time barometric changes or elevation changes. You only get elevation changes when you're running a GPS type workout. So the Venu SQ, not anything in the fitness world, no real new developments. It does a great job with health and wellness because, as I said before, I do like the body battery tracking, and I do feel like Garmin's got a great AMOLED option in the Venu that captures all the main stats if you're just comparing it to watches that just track your heart rate and give you heart rate zone output. But, it doesn't give you any of the workout analytics. So last but not least is the only ones that are coming, and I'm not going to give in a great detail, is the 745 and the HRM-Pro. The HRM-Pro looks like a major development, or at least a good step up in a chest strap and what it is capable of for all the different functions, whether you're swimming with the chest strap or running or cycling, and just overall tracking your heart rate. The 745 is like the little brother to the 945, the big brother to the 245, and it does basically everything the 945 does, but just doesn't have maps and has less battery life. So it's a smaller casing. It's got, a 7-day battery life versus 14, and there's no maps included, but it does a lot of the new features. And now Garmin, like I said in the recent released video, they have a new improved recovery time that's coming to the 245, 745, 945 Fenix 6 series. As well, the 745 will have the updated sleep analytics and sleep score that you'll be able to see on the watch that was previously only available or updated in the Fenix 6 that is coming to the 945 and is in the 745. 245 doesn't get the sleep, but the improved recovery time is awesome. Like I said in that separate video, it's tracking your heart rate variability, which is your depletion or regeneration of your internal resources over time. But they're now going to take into account your recovery time from a workout is relative to your heart rate variability, your body battery, your sleep analysis, and something, some aspect of relaxation to culminate in a true recovery time that's taking all these different metrics and giving you a more clear, based on a bunch more data, amount of time you should be taking off between the next hard workout. So that's it. That's a summary for the Fitbit Sense and Versa 3, Apple Watch SE and 6, Suunto updates on the 3, 5, 7, and 9, the Garmin Venu SQ, as well as touching on the 745 and HRM-Pro. So I'm probably going to start testing on a new to be released device that I can't get into the details of yet, but I also plan to test the 745 and maybe we'll test the HRM-Pro. That seems to be a little bit more focused on the benefits you would experience if you were a triathlete or doing any one of those variables that triathlons include. So 745, hopefully that'll come up in the next, upcoming weeks, but stay tuned for more. Again, this is the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.